Remember, we're on chapter 17, which is probably like in the 90s, around there somewhere. I don't know if we're going to be able to finish this chapter. Hopefully we will before the period ends.
Wait, you said chapter 17 or 18?
Yeah, I think we're on 17. I might be wrong. Let me just find it. I'm pretty sure it's 17 that we're on. Yes, I think we're on 17.
17's on page 90.
Yeah, so this is exactly where we are. So remember, I know it's been a week since we last read. So remember, in the last chapter, um, it's the aftermath of the party, and Porter is questioning Woodrow on the fact that they thought he put alcohol in the lady's drink, and he says no, he was just trying to trick her. And then at the end of we'll see that Woodrow and Gypsy are starting to have beef with each other. They have problems, and at the very end of the chapter, Woodrow tells a story about a girl with long hair who cheats on her husband, tries to kill him, gets murdered, and then winds up strangling him through her hair at the end. And it's basically just a story to upset Gypsy. And again, all you're starting to see is that there's just a little bit of drama between the two characters. So this is just a continuation, chapter 17. For the rest of the summer, vacation things were not quite the same between me and Woodrow, but we were polite to each other. We didn't mention the change. And again, the change they're talking about is the problems that they have here. Last Saturday, in August, Mama took me to Bristol to shop for new clothes, like she did every year. I didn't ask Woodrow to go along, even though I knew he had never been there and he really wanted to go. I got dresses, skirts, sweaters, shoes, and a topper for cool fall mornings. We had lunch at an S&W cafeteria and drove home late through the rolling hills of Abingdon and Lebanon. It was a beautiful drive, just me and Mama. We had a good time. Cole Station got its first stoplight at the intersection of Residence and Main, and we all trekked down there to see it, even the dog. So this just kind of shows you, again, this is like a long time ago, how kind of like small town this town is, that they're making a big deal of having a traffic light put up. So again, this is just like a super small town, and like it's like a big deal for everyone. Which, just again, this is because it's such a small town. It's just like big news. Grandpa was in the market, excuse me, for a new car, so Woodrow went around singing car commercial ditties. So again, a lot of the way people used to advertise products nowadays, it's like all online or through like commercials. But back then, they would have like songs on the radio that you would hear that are trying to make you buy a car or whatever. What a joy to take the wheel in your brand new Oldsmobile. So this is probably like a song that you would hear on the radio. And you got to drive it to believe it. The Dodge for 55. Also, Ford, new kind of Ford, carved tomorrow by Ford, right? So these are all just like songs you probably heard on the radio. Woodrow also had a new joke. Name me two cars that start with P. Of course, everybody would say Plymouth and Pontiac. And then Woodrow would come back with, no, they start with gas. So again, he's telling jokes. The apples started falling. Summer was dying. That's an example of what? What is summer was dying an example of?
Hyperbole?
Not a hyperbole.
That means it's going to fall.
Metaphor?
Not a metaphor.
Oh, it's a personification.
Yeah, it's personification. Good. Saying the summer's dying is basically saying that the summer's ending, right? It looked like Cleveland was going to win the World Series, or going to the World Series. There were no new developments in the Bell Prater case. Remember, the case is just basically her still being missing. My old familiar nightmare came more often, but with less horror. So remember, she keeps having this image of a dead like animal, and she doesn't know why she keeps having it, but it just keeps coming back. It didn't send me into hysterics anymore, so usually she wakes up and she's like in a big fit, crying and acting like nuts. Sometimes I would wake up with a tear on my cheek, haunted by the memory of blood on the face of a dead animal. Again, she keeps thinking about something dying, and it's causing her to not necessarily wake up like screaming or whatever, but she wakes up crying, so obviously she's sad by it. I would look out my open window at the stars at such times, and I can almost recall what it was the nightmare was trying to tell me. Almost. The ugly thing seemed ready to come out and show itself to me. So I'm going to give you guys a little information. So throughout the entire story, there's this whole idea of this dead thing that's coming out. Um, there's a term called foreshadowing. So what foreshadowing is when an author leaves clues about something that's going to happen. So that's foreshadowing. So later on in this chapter, that foreshadowing is actually going to come to play. So all these little clues about what they're talking about, these dreams, and by the end of the chapter, you'll kind of see why the dreams keep coming. School started back the day after Labor Day, and Woodrow and I advanced to the seventh grade. You couldn't call it high school yet, but it was in the same building as the high school, and we would be changing classes. On the first day, Woodrow and I found out we were assigned to the same homeroom. Our teacher was new, a man from Eastern Virginia. Neither of us had ever had a man teacher before. Several of our classmates, including Buzz, Mary Lee, Franklin Delano, Flo, and Willie, were in our room again. We all sat there in new clothes before the bell rang, talked in hushed voices, sizing the teacher up. He was a middle-aged man with tiny blue eyes and a big red nose. He was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and a tie, which I thought was uncalled for in this heat. Already beads of sweat were popping out on his forehead. I reckon each one of us was wondering what the school year would bring. I was secretly promising myself to make the honor roll every 6 weeks, which was nothing new for me. I always made the honor roll, and Mama always said, "That's my good girl." I wonder what she would say if I made straight C's. The bell interrupted my thoughts. "Good morning, young men and women," the teacher said. We pulled ourselves up to attention and tried to look the part. "I'm Mr. Collins, your homeroom and first period English teacher." Straight away, Woodrow wanted to know what was his relation to Floyd Collins, the poor man who got himself trapped in the Kentucky cave. "None whatsoever," Mr. Collins replied, "though I've read of that unfortunate man." That was a new one on Woodrow. He had never heard tell of two people bearing the same last name and being no kin at all. So right now, Woodrow doesn't understand why two people with the same name aren't related. He's like, what? Like, how are they not related?
Yeah, it's kind of confusing because I've met a few of people have my dad's same first name and last name, and it's kind of weird because they're not related.
Yeah, so there's probably relations like way back, but yeah, most people aren't like related. Just got the same last name doesn't mean you're related to them. He told Mr. Collins as much. Why, everybody knew a prater was a prater, a Honaker was a Honaker, and a Coleman was a Coleman, no matter where they lived, right? So again, they're kind of saying that there's relations. Same as a dog was a dog and a cat was a cat. You couldn't get away from it. Sometimes it was hard to tell if Woodrow was putting you on or not. Well, perhaps somewhere in the far past, Mr. Collins conceded. All Collinses did come from the same hoose. What's a hoose? Woodrow wanted to know. That's how they say house in Eastern Virginia, Franklin Delano said, giving us a short lesson in dialect. My uncle lives in Fincastle, and out where they say about the hoose instead of about the house, right? So again, something that's kind of interesting about just like dialects and cultures, right? So if you go to different parts of the country, there's such different variety in terms of the way people speak. I know when I travel, especially overseas, people from here in this area, New Jersey, New York, I don't know about other parts, but we talk very fast. Like, I don't know if you noticed that. Like, my words come out pretty quickly. I remember I went to Wisconsin. This was like 2 or 3 years ago, and like they talk super slow. It's weird. It's like, "Hello there, sir. Can I help you?" Whereas around here, people talk really fast, right? And again, you'll
I know
hear,
it's weird.
yeah, and even things, even yeah. So there's the speed that we talk at from here, and there's also like pronunciation, right? So if you go to England, people have like a British accent. You go down south, people have a Southern accent. People in California have like a Valley Girl accent. So like, "Hello there, how you doing, sir?" And I mean, like, it depends on where you go. Like, you'll hear all kinds of different intonations and way people speak. So Woodrow's confused because this guy says hoose instead of house. Um, that didn't bother Mr. Collins one bit. In fact, he said it was an amusing observation. I decided I was going to like him. "I'm new here," Mr. Collins went, "not only in your school, but in your town. I arrived in Cole Station only last week, and I'm staying at the Presbyterian Manse with the minister and his good wife. So I would like to start by learning some things about you and your families. Could we have some volunteers first?" Of course, Woodrow volunteered. "My name is Woodrow Prater. I live with my granny and grandpa Ball in a great big old 2-story hoose." Woodrow paused and grinned at Mr. Collins, who grinned back at him. "On Resident Street. We have—" "He's Belle Prater's boy," Buzz interrupted. You know about her, Mr. Collins? What is Buzz doing here? Why did Buzz just do that? Why did Buzz say what he said? Why did Buzz?
He's asking him.
Yeah, but what is he really doing there? What is Buzz doing? He says,
Trying to feel Woodrow back.
yeah, he's trying to make Woodrow feel bad, right? So again, now this is the first time they're meeting the teacher, and then what does Buzz do? He mentions the fact that this guy's Bell Prater's boy, and what do we know about Bell Prater?
She intentionally left
Yeah.
or
Nothing.
died.
Exactly,
Well,
yeah, exactly. So she's missing. So again, it's him bringing this up is going to upset Woodrow. It's the fact that she's missing. No, Mr. Collins said, I'm not familiar with that name. Tell Mr. Collins, Woodrow, Bez went on with a devilish grin, so he knows it's going to upset Woodrow to bring this up. Tell about your mama disappearing into thin air and all. Everybody looked at Woodrow. I saw a shadow of pain flit across his face, but he collected himself just like that. So again, Buzz wants to get him upset, but Woodrow is calm enough to not let it bother him as much. Good idea, he said cheerfully. It was like this, Mr. Collins. My mama, Belle Prater, learned the secret of invisibility. I see, Mr. Collins said politely. Go on. She wasn't like most grown folks. She was still a child in some ways. She wished upon a star and played that she had a fairy godmother, stuff like that. She made up swell stories for me about the little people, and she believed in magic. You have to believe, to make the magic work for you. Mr. Collins nodded. We saw this ad in the back of a Red Ryder comic book. Woodrow went on, I remember there was a picture of a little beaver on the front cover. And the ad says, do you want to become invisible? Learn the formula of the gods. Order your invisible recipe today. And it gave an address to order. I wanted it more than Mama did. So it was actually kind of something weird. I remember this. So he's bringing up a story that you can order in magic invisible potions. I remember back in the day, they used to do that. They actually used to have weird, crazy things that you can order from the back of a magazine, and you would send in money and a stamp, and you would get these weird things. But then none of them are real or working. So this story that he's telling, that he tried to order something, is possible. The fact that his mom learned of indivisibility is obviously not. But you used to be able to order weird, kind of crazy, gimmicky things from magazines back in the day. Order it, Mama, I begged her. I want to learn how to be invisible. Because I thought it would be fun to go around the other kids at school and hear what they said, and go to them later and repeat it to them. So just for fun, we ordered the recipe. It was 75 cents, and we took it out of our carnival fund. That's another thing my mom liked. The carnival. We always went over to the grassy lake when the carnival was there. Then our recipe came in the mail, and some of the things it called for were so outlandish, like a vulture's feather, a jack-in-the-pulpit petal, a squirrel's toenail, a quart of dew from the graveyard, a pint of mother's milk, a hair from the mustache of a man with a girl's name. She got that one, by the way, from old Leslie Matney before he kicked the bucket. Spit from a baby no more than 2 hours old, and I don't know what all. I forget the rest. Anyhow, I lost interest because it was so complicated, but Mama was so curious her nose liked to twitch out a joint. She was determined to mix that brew, and she did. She plotted and planned and went skulking about her holler till she found all of the ingredients that she needed, and she stirred them up and let them steep for 3 days like it said. When Daddy complained about the smell, she told him she was making sauerkraut. If Daddy had been sober, he would have known it wasn't seasoned for cabbage. Then on the 4th day, I come home from school and Mama was nowhere. Well, she was somewhere, but nowhere that you could see. I searched the house, the barn, called, but got no answer. So I went to the kitchen and I sat down to a bowl of cornbread and milk, and I heard Mama say, I'm here, Woodrow, right beside you. I about swallowed my spoon. Well, it's okay, Woodrow, she said. I drunk only a little, so I'll be reappearing soon. And I felt a rush of air in my arm like she was touching me. The more you drink, the longer you stay invisible, she said. Maybe we'll drink some together and go visiting next Sunday. Won't that be fun? And I said, Joe Palooka. It was about all I could think of to say. Then she reappeared about an hour later, and she was so excited. Next time I'll drink more, she said to me. Lots more. Just think, Woodrow. You can go to the show and the carnival and not have to pay. And you can go on the buses and trains or ships or planes even. Why, you can go anywhere. It was the next Sunday morning she disappeared, and we haven't heard from her since. Woodrow sat down abruptly. Mr. Collins grinned. You could tell he didn't believe one word that Woodrow said, but he was going along with the story. Right. So again, this story is basically, a story about Woodrow saying that his mom ordered some magic potion. She drank it, and now she turned invisible. A week later, she disappeared. And obviously, the teacher is not believing this. And where, pray, do you think she went? He said. New York City, probably, Woodrow said nonchalantly. There's a doctor there who operates on crossed eyes and makes them straight. I know she'll send for me soon. What a lie, Buzz hissed under his breath. You've got quite an imagination, Woodrow. But let's remember the difference between fact and fantasy. Who's next? About 3 people volunteered, and I told their things before I raised my hand. I'm Gypsy the Arbutus Lee Master, I said, and I. Beauty's a short name for Arbutus. Don't you think it suits her, Mr. Collins? Very much so, Mr. Collins agreed. Don't you think we should call her Beauty? Flo went on sweetly. I felt an angry flush creeping up my cheeks. Why is she getting mad at that? Let's see if you guys remember. Why is she getting mad at that about being called Beauty?
Because she thinks that people, it's about her hair and that nobody sees her, and like her hair's like tapping her. She feels like she's covered, like she's trapped.
Yep, so that's part of it. And what else? Who's the person who used to call her Beauty?
Because her dad called her that.
Yeah, and her dad called her that, right? So that's, yep. So it's a combination of those two. She doesn't want to be known for her looks, and her father used to call her that, which obviously upsets her. I can play the piano, I blurted out, which shows that she's obviously upset about only people looking at her beauty. The class fell silent in surprise. I was agitated under the watchful gaze, but I felt like I had to say something that was hidden under this golden hair. Woodrow can tell good stories, I stammered, but I can tell good jokes, and I make good grades, and animals like me, so she's kind of like ranting on, acting a little crazy here. My classmates seemed puzzled. I took several deep breaths, and I tried to calm down. So, Buzz interjected rudely. I saw Woodrow bristle, so again, Woodrow's getting tired of Buzz's nonsense. I live on Residence Street with my mom and stepfather, Porter Dotson, I concluded quickly, and I sat down. Porter Dotson, Mr. Collins said. Yes, he is one person I've met since I've been here, a very fine man. He's not as fine as my real daddy. And so again, she's acting kind of crazy. The words came out of nowhere. His name was Amos Lee Master. He died when I was 5. Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. Was it an accident? Suddenly my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and my mouth was so dry my lips stuck together. I pushed back my hair with shaking fingers, and I felt sweat trickling down my back. Yes, it was an accident, I said. I glanced at Woodrow, and he gave me an encouraging smile. He was a volunteer fireman, I went on, and I could hear my voice trembling. And he went into a burning house to save a baby, and he did save the baby, but he died. That's a lie, Buzz Osborne said out loud. So what did Gypsy just say happened to her father?
He died in a fire because he was saving a baby.
Yeah, so that's the story that she told, right? So Buzz is saying that's a lie. So in her mind, she's saying her father died saving a baby in a fire. That's a very rude thing to say, Mr. Collins scolded Buzz. So Mr. Collins isn't liking that he's like contradicting her. Well, it is a lie. Let me tell you. Shut up, Buzz, Woodrow shouted, so now Woodrow's getting pissed. I was gripped with terror. Buzz was going to say it. He was going to make me hear it. My mother said that Amos Lee Master got his face so scarred up in that fire that you couldn't recognize him. And I said, shut up, Woodrow hollered as he stood up and he moved towards Buzz. Boys, so obviously Woodrow's going to start some violence. Mr. Collins tried to intervene, but his voice was drowned out by Buzz's next words. And he was married to the prettiest woman in the hills. We do not talk about this in front of Gypsy, Woodrow screamed, and he raised his fist to Buzz. So he took a gun and shot his own self in the face, Buzz continued. Amos Lee Master killed himself. So there it was. The ugly thing was out. Okay, so now, what happened to the father?
He killed him.
Well, there's a rumor that he married a pretty woman and then he shot himself.
Yeah, so he shot himself, and obviously they're saying he shot himself because of the physical scarring or whatever. So now, if you think about earlier when I was saying there's foreshadowing, so what are these nightmares that Gypsy keeps having?
Dead animals.
Yeah, so what is she really dreaming about?
Oh, it's father?
Yeah, it's her father. So these recurring nightmares that she has that aren't clear what it is, that she's seeing this dead thing, is actually her thinking about what happened to her father. Okay, the father's death. And we'll see a little bit more as we read on to the next chapter about what happened. All right, so we're going to start Socrative, so you only got like a minute or two to do it. So just see if you can do like the
Wait, we're
first.
done with the chapter?
Yeah, that's the end of the chapter.
Oh, wow.
So just see if you can do like one or two questions. I'll give you more time tomorrow to do the rest of them. But we're almost out of here.
Mister, don't we have to go in like 2 minutes?
Yeah, we're leaving in a minute. So just see if you can do like one or two questions until we get out of here.